start with understanding what exactly is OpenLayers. So OpenLayers is a mapping library which allows us to put geospatial information or geospatial data on a JavaScript framework. So basically, we are able to use any type of GIS data, and we can use that data and we can present it on our map in our website. Currently, OpenLayers version 7.1 is out, and it's pretty promising. They have increased a lot of new functionalities into it. But we are actually going to use a little bit older version, let's say 6.15, or we can also use 7.1. The main reason why I want to use the lower version is because there are less chances of finding any bug. But of course, there are trade-offs. When we use a older version, we don't get the new functionalities that are built in the application. So for this video, at least, we are going to focus on 6.15, and if time permits, we will definitely have a look at 7.1 as well. Now, OpenLayers can be used with any JavaScript framework. Let it be Vue.js, Angular, React, or even if you want to use a vanilla JavaScript, you can do that using. You can basically use OpenLayers in it. For the sake of simplicity, we will be creating application in a vanilla JavaScript. But again, that doesn't mean that you cannot use the OpenLayers package with React or something like that. You can definitely do that. So to begin with, we will first of all understand. We'll first of all understand the documentation of this. So oftentimes when I work with OpenLayers, or oftentimes when I show OpenLayers to someone, they get scared by looking at the documentation because there are so many things, and it becomes confusing that like what exactly do we have to use. And in this video, we are actually going to focus on that as well. So we will start with creating a very basic map on our JavaScript application. So to do that, what I will do is I will simply open my terminal. I will go to desktop and create a new folder. OL workshop. And I will create files such as index.html. And then I will simply open this in VS Code. All right. So we'll start with, first of all, creating a simple HTML page. So we'll give the name OpenLayers. And we'll write h1 tag. We want map. Okay. And since I have a live server plugin installed, I'll be able to go live. And here we go. So we have our basic HTML template ready. Now it's time for us to add OpenLayers code in that. So to begin with, for this exercise, what we are going to do is we are actually going to use the CDN version of it. So as I said, since we are going to work with a vanilla JavaScript, we will use CDN. But of course, if you want to work with Node, then you can install it by simply doing npm install OL. And yeah, let's just use 7.1. It's not going to matter anyways. So what I'll do is import OL via. Okay. Now we have the JavaScript and CSS available with us. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to define where exactly in our code we want to see the map. And we do that by creating a div with the ID of map and class of map. So here, this ID will be used to hook our OpenLayers code with this particular div. And then we can use this map class to actually give some styling such as width and height, things like that. So I will simply open a style tag over here, and I will write map. And let's say the height might be 80 VH and width can be 100%. Okay, so far so good. Now we have a div where we have given ID and class. And of course, this can be anything. You can give any name that you want. It is totally up to you. And we have set up the style. Now the last thing is actually putting life into this div. To do that, what we will do is we'll actually create a map.js file. And we will connect this JavaScript file to our index.html. So I will write script main.js. And let's just confirm if this works. So if I write alert, it works. Now if I go back, we are not able to see it. Let's see. Okay, it should be map.js, not main.js, and there we go. We have it works. Okay, so far we are again good. Now what I will do is I will actually move the div lower to we want map. Okay, perfect. Now we will create our map component. So understand this fact that whenever you will work with any sort of mapping library, you will be creating a map component. And this map component will have different properties depending upon what library are you using. So for example, in our case, we are using OpenLayers. So what I will do is I will simply go to examples, and I will go examples of 4.6 because that was written in vanilla JavaScript. But that's fine. We can use code from 4.6 still with the version 7.1. That should not be a problem. And here you will see that we can simply copy this and paste it over here. Now let's understand it line by line. So we are initiating a variable map, and then we are assigning a new object, new ol.map. Now this ol.map comes from OpenLayers. So the way we have added ol.js and ol.css. So from this ol.js, we get this ol.map. Inside this, now we have different options available. So first one is layers, and you can notice that this is an array. So layers actually denote that what all layers do you want in your map. For now, don't worry what is tile or what is OSM. Just bear the fact that layers will actually define how many layers or what type of layers you want in your application. Second is target. Target is exactly the ID that we use over here. So if you remember, we used div of ID map, and that is why we have map over here. If we added something like map GIS, then we can also make that change over here and it will still work. Finally, we have controls that we can see afterwards, and we have view. View actually defines what should be the view of your map. So for example, when we load the map for the first time, we want the map to be centered at 0, 0 coordinate system, and the zoom level should be 2. Now, one thing that we have to remember is that by default projection system for OpenLayers is EPSG 3857. Okay. Now, if I save this and if I head back to my application one more time, there you go. So we have a map, and because we added this layer as OSM, again, don't worry about it right now. Because we added this layer as OSM, we are able to see OpenStreetMap on our map. If I simply remove this, if I simply comment this, you will see that we still see the zoom in, zoom out button. But of course, since we don't have any layers, we are not able to see any data. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you guys, and this is how much easy it is to add map on your website. So you can understand how easy it is for us. It's just a couple of lines of code where you set up a basic layers, where you set up the target, and where you set up where do you actually want to land your map when we load it for the first time. So for example, if I want to load it over here, how do I do it? Now, how will I understand that what is the center of my map right now, or what is the zoom level of my map right now? Now, all these things are available with this variable of map. Because we initiated this new ol.map, we can extract so many information from this variable. If I open my console and if I type map, you will see that we have so many controls available over here. Now, because we want to understand what is the center, that means we have to understand the property of view. And to do that, we can do something like map.getView.getCenter. And this will exactly tell me what is the center of my map. So you can see that I got new center. I can simply copy it for now. I will paste it over here. And I can also look for the zoom level. Like what is the current zoom level of my map? So if I select zoom, it tells me that I'm at 14.11. So roughly I can give something like 14. And if I save this and if I reload my map, you will see that we are exactly at the location which we wanted. So this is how easy it is to actually extract the data also from OpenLayers. So far, we have seen some of the properties, but again, as I said, this new.ol.map has tons of properties. And to understand what all properties are there, we can simply go to API and search for ol.map. And this will give us all the methods and all the parameters available with us. So as you can see, under options, we have controls, we have pixel ratio, interactions, keyboard event, layers, which is the one that we are using, tiles, load tiles while animating, load tiles while interacting, logo, overlays, renderer, view, and so on and so forth. So you can see that how many options we can pass while creating the map. And it is not like that once you pass it, then that's all, like you can never change. It's not the case. You can always change the information that you have set once. So for example, if I want to, let's say on some function, if I want to zoom my map to, let's say somewhere here. All right, let's say we go to Cape Town. Okay. Now what I will do is, I can simply write, first of all, I will get the information that what are the coordinate systems and center. Get center. Okay. I will save this, I will copy this for now, and I will reload my map. And now I will use a new command, map.getView.set center. So earlier we were using get center to get the data, and now we are using set center to set the data. And if I set this, you will see that we are able to change the center of our map very easily. So this is how we can use different types of techniques available over here. Now, the map object also comes with some of the fire events. So what are exactly fire events? So for example, let's say if you want to trigger some function when you're clicking or when you're panning the map or something like that, or maybe you're double clicking, you can do that by using these fire events. So for every single thing, for example, if I search for ol.layer, you will see that the documentation is created in such a good way that every single thing or every single type of object will follow the same protocol. We will have the name, then we will have all the options available over there, and then we will have all the fire events that we can attach this with. So this makes it very easy for us to learn and for us to read the documentation. That is very important, because once you understand how to read the documentation, you never have to learn or by heart the code. You can always refer to the documentation and understand. So if you remember, we were using some get and set related information, right? So if I go to ol.view, I will be able to show you those over here. So if you see, we have get center, which get the view center. We have so many get options available. We have get center, get animation, get max zoom, get max resolution. And similarly, we also have set center, set max zoom. So none of these things that I'm trying to show you I actually, I actually learned this without looking at documentation. I always refer to the documentation. And since I'm using them forever now, I can directly write it without looking at documentation. But that doesn't mean that documentation is bad. Every time when I am stuck somewhere, I first of all try to find out how can I solve this problem using documentation itself. So this is how you can actually read the documentation. All right, now back to our ol.map. So under ol.map, we have seen options, right? We have seen layers, we have seen target, view, things like that. Now let's try to understand these fire events. Now there is one fire event which is known as click. So a click with no dragging, a double click will fire two of this. Okay. So when I'm clicking on the map and I'm not dragging, so for example, this is dragging effect. When I'm not dragging, but simply I'm clicking on the map, then this fire event will be fired. So let's see how to use click. So to do that, we will simply write something like this: map dot on click, and then we will write some function. So function e, and for now let's just say console.log e. Okay, so far so good. Now if I go back to my OpenLayers application and if I click anywhere, you will see that I'm getting this click event, and not just the event, but I'm also getting a lot of data along with it. So for example, I'm getting the map itself if we need it, but I'm also getting target. So if I actually put some debugger over here, and if I click, I can actually look at these characters, target dot get And there are so many things. We can have get layers. We can practically have so many things. So again, this is again, if you want to understand what are all things that are available and what do they represent, you can always refer back to the documentation. Okay. Now we'll see how exactly we can unload this event as well, because this is something that I see a lot of people struggle with. They are able to understand how to add the event, but they are not able to understand how to remove the event, and that creates a lot of problems. So for example, what I want to do is I want to have two buttons, add click, and then button, remove click. Okay, and I will just add some dummy functions to it. Add click, and remove click. Okay, now I will go over here and I will write my function. So function add click. And what I want to do over here is I want to add something to my map.on function, right? So for now, I will write click function. And then what I will do is I will change my current function to the click function. So I will do something like this. Function current function E, and then I will simply do console log E. Now I will remove this and I will write functions like this. So when I do map.add click, I want to do on, and when I want to remove it, now this is where it's fun. So I will actually copy this, paste it over here, and I will use un. So un actually represents of removing any sort of event attached to it. And now you can notice that the way we can achieve this is by actually separating the function altogether. So we cannot have function E over here directly, because then what will happen is that when you click, when you run this command map.un, it will not be able to understand that what is the function that you're trying to remove from it. I will simply save this. I will go back. I will refresh. And right now I don't have any function. You can see I'm clicking and nothing is happening. When I do add click, voila, I'm able to again check stuff at console. And when I click on remove, nothing is happening. So this is exactly how you can add and remove functions from your map. Okay, enough about map. Now let's try to understand layers. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the core reasons why I love OpenLayers is because there are so many options available when it comes to adding layers. So when I go to ol.layer tab, you will see that by default, these are all classes that ol.layer supports. So we can add a base layer, we can add a group layer, we can create heat map, image layer, a normal layer, tile layer, vector layer, and vector tile layer. So if you check out the one that we have right now, it is ol.layer.tile. And the reason why it is like that is then when we are loading this data, you can see that the tile effect is there. When we are zooming in or zooming out, tiles are getting loaded. Now, depending upon what is your source, you will actually select the different type of ol.layer, the different type of layer that you want to add. Now, again, as we discussed yesterday, we will actually try to see it via a diagram. So the main component is ol.map. ol.map. Okay, so this is our main component. I will actually increase the size of this so that you can see it. 32. Okay, now under ol.map we will have layers. So as we said, we'll have layers, we will have view, we will have interactions, and we'll have so many other things like overlay and things like that. But for now, for this beginners workshop, I'm going to keep things very simple. And of course, we also have target and things like that, but these are pretty much static. Like we cannot do much about this. So I'm not considering the fact. Now, ol.map will consist of this, and this. Interaction, again, we have not mentioned any interaction, and that is because it is not the important. It is not very important to pass that. So if I go to ol.map one more time, you can see that It is a collection of all the interactions that we want. And if we do not specify, it will take the default interactions. So it's fine. Like even if we don't specify something, it will take the default one. But for example, if we don't specify target itself, then it is not going to render the map itself. So basically, there are few options which are mandatory and few options which are obviously up to us, like optional. Okay. Now, under layers, as we mentioned, we have so many types of layers. So under layer, we have group, base, heat map, image, layer, tile, vector tile, and vector. Now, these are going to be your layer itself. Now, these are going to be your layer itself. But layer is itself consists of multiple options inside it. So if I click on any of the layer, let's say if I click on the tile layer, you can see that tile layer also depends upon few of the options. Opacity, default, so we don't need to provide it. Preload is also default, but source is required. That means whenever we want to create a new layer, we will have to provide source. So source is one of the required option while creating a layer. Map, we don't need to provide. Visibility, default is there. Extent, nothing else is important, but just the source itself. Everything else has some default value. But what do we understand from here is that tile type of layer requires source to it. If I look at some another type of layer, let's say vector, you will see that we have different options over here. We have source, but we also have style. One of the core difference between tile and vector format is that when we are using vector format, we are doing style on our client side. So styling is handled by OpenLayers. But when it comes to tile layer, if you remember from our yesterday's video, we create style in Geoserver itself, and then we just load that data as a PNG. And that is why somewhere you will have style as an important characteristic, somewhere you will not have them. Again, depending upon what type of layer you are trying to build, you will have different types of options available. So as I wrote down, source is the mandatory one, and then we can have style. We can also have Z index. So the Z index define where exactly that layer will sit on our map. So for example, if we have multiple layers, the one where the Z index will be maximum will be on the top. So if you give Z index of, let's say, 999, that layer is going to be on the top. Then if you have Z index of something like 5 or 6. So Z index is again optional, because if you don't specify it, it will understand. If you don't specify it, what OpenLayers will do is it will take the current layer count and it will then add one more layer on top of it. So by default, whatever new layer that you will add, it will automatically go at the top. But if you don't want to, if you don't want this to happen, then you can manually specify the Z index value. So like that, layers consist of these different types of attribute itself. So I hope these things are clear to you guys. So once you understand the underlying logic of OpenLayers, it becomes very easy, because then you can use any sort of data, and then you can use OpenLayers to display that data. So that becomes, life becomes very easy in that case. Now, similar to layers, we'll also see that view also has some options available to it. So if I copy this for now, and if I go to ol.view, you can see that in ol.view we have center. So default is undefined. So if you don't specify it, there'll be a problem for sure. Then you can present some other options such as extent. If you want to rotate the map, what is the default zoom that you want to give, and by how many resolutions you want to change the zoom, like zoom factor and things like that. So again, I would say that the most important one will be center and zoom. Notice that we can also change the projection system of our application. So if we check it right now, map.getView .get projection, you'll see that current code is 3857. But if I mention, let's say for this, I will have to keep it 00, because this is not the correct projection in EPSG 4326. So if I do 0,0, and if I define projection as If I do something like this, and if I run this command again, you will see that now my projections are EPSG 4326. But that doesn't mean that you can take any sort of projection system like 32643 and directly implement it. It will not work in that way, because by default, OpenLayers only understands 4326 and EPSG 3857. If you even want to add your own projection system in your application, then you can use something like proj4j. This library can help you to add different types of projections to your map. And if you check the example section, if I type projection, you will see that we can have reprojection with different systems. So if I do 32643 and if I search, you will see that I got different projections. So this is, again, it is possible. It is not something that is that comes by default, but of course it is possible. Okay, now let's get back to the main application and we will change it to something like 4326. And now it's time for us to add some data on our OpenLayers. So I will go to the application, go over here, and we want to start with, first of all, adding the tile data coming from our Geoserver. So to do that, I will also initiate my Geoserver. So I will open my terminal, cd. If you remember from yesterday, so we installed cd local Geoserver bin, and I have to do sh startup.sh. Now this will take a minute or two. Meanwhile, we will check out what are the necessities that we have for OL tile. Now for OL tile, there is also a type of source available. So the source is ol.source.tile. Now if you check out over here, this is how we can create ol.tile.source. And now inside this, we can add different properties. So for example, if your data is coming from Geoserver, you can add those properties. So if we go to the examples and if we look at WMS, you will see that there is a WMS code available over here. Let's try to load it and we will see how does it work. So here you can see that if you want to add, so again, a same layer can be added as image WMS or image layer or a tile layer. The potential difference between both will be that in a tile layer, data will load tile by tile. So you will still see the data when you are scrolling through the map. So for example, if I scroll back, I will still see some data and other data will be loading. But when it comes to image, the OpenLayers will only show the data when the entire image is loaded. So this is the potential difference between these two types of layers. So I will simply copy this code for now, and I will add a new layer in our layer system. So if I go to VS Code, and notice that if I add the layer on top of OSM, then first our layer will be loaded and then OSM will be loaded. So of course we will not be able to see our data. So to do that, we will add our data after OSM is loaded. So here we have ol.layer.image, and as I said, we can always change it to tile. And then we will add this image WMS source. So I will simply add this source, and as we saw our diagram, layer just needs source and everything else is optional. So even if I want to give Z index, I can give, but doesn't make any sense. And now I will check if my Geoserver is up and running, and I'll go to localhost 8080. Sorry. And now I can go to my layers. Now notice that one of the cool feature of Geoserver is that it has also given us the native SRS. Now what does that mean? So if technically speaking, if our map is in 4326, does it mean that we can only load the data in 4326? Let's have a look at it. So if I go to our layer preview, and if I try to take any layer, let's say Tiger Roads, I will simply copy this command till here, till WMS. So we have to give a WMS layer, and then we have to mention the layer name. So in our case, the layer name is Tiger Roads. So I will change it. And if I now refresh my map, we'll see that we are getting course error. Now, why exactly is this happening? Why do you think that we are getting course error? If I change it to localhost, and if I try it, you'll see that we are still getting a course error. So this is a by default setting available in Geoserver, where it will not allow any any sort of IP to connect and fetch the data from your Geoserver. But obviously, this is not what we will want. When you will put it in production, you will need to put this data in Geoserver and allow outside users to use Geoserver. Now, to do that, what you can do is you can actually check out my article on my homepage, and under my article, you can see that how can we work with the course error. So to show you very quickly, what I will do is I will simply open that folder in my Finder, go to folder, user, local, Geoserver, web apps, Geoserver, web INF, and web.xml. Now I will change this file and I will search for course and I will uncomment this Jetty core because we have installed platform independent binary, and that is why we have to be sure that we are only uncommenting the Jetty code. If you are using something like Apache, then you can actually uncomment the Tomcat code. And after that, I will again simply uncomment this code. And I will restart my Geoserver because, as I said, any change that we make in Geoserver, we need to restart it so that it can load all the settings file. You can understand the underlying logic about it in this blog, and I also have video about it. So don't worry, you can understand how exactly the course work and why you need to worry about it. That is also very important because you don't want to, you obviously want to have some security in your application, right? Now, if I load this and if I go to New York, there we go. So we have our data, right? There you go. We can see our data. So this is exactly how it is working. Now, for the sake of use, for the sake of doing it faster, what I will do is I will set this as my center so that we can come to this location ASAP. Okay. Now, if I reload my map, you can see that all the image is loading at one go. So if I zoom out, you can see that all the image is loading at one go. This is because we have given it as a image WMS. If I replace it with tile, you will see that it is coming tile by tile. So this is the potential difference between using normal image WMS and a tile WMS. Finally, we will also see how to add pop-up to this. And to do that, here is the code available. So I will simply copy this for now, and then I will show you what we are doing. So I will paste this code over here. And now what we are doing is map.on single. So I hope you are familiar with this now, map.on single click. So when we are clicking it, what we want to do is, we first of all, obviously we will need to add this info div in our application. So I will add info. Okay. And now what we are doing is, we are taking the WMS source. Now in this case, we don't have any sort of variable with the name as WMS source. So for this particular reason, what I will do is I will move this tile source from here to a new variable var WMS source is equal to this, and I will add this WMS source over here. It will still work, but now we can actually access this data. If we don't want to do it in this way, then what we'll have to do is we'll have to do like a map.get all layers, and then we'll have to find out that particular layer and then get source. Then we can have handle of this source. So if we want to do that, that is fine. But now notice over here. Now we have written that we want to take the coordinates of where we are clicking. We want to take the resolution. So resolution is something that will come from view, and we also don't have a variable of view. But here I can write something like map.getView, and I will pass that over here. And we will write 3857. If I write 3857 and if I pass it over here, if I reload my map and if I click, you will see that this will not work. Now, one of the core reasons why this will not work is the way, again, these are small things that are changed from one version to another. So WMS source dot get feature info. So we have get feature info URL, but earlier version had a code of get feature info URL. So these are some small things that are changed over the time. Now, if I reload and if I click over here, you can see that we again have to set some course error. But to save our time, what we will do is we will simply change this to application JSON, because we can also get the data back in a JSON format. And what we will do is we will simply console log this. Console. So we'll do fetch. We'll do fetch call of this URL. And we'll do then. We convert resource to res.json. And then we'll simply take the data and we will console.log the data. So basically what it is doing is that it is taking that URL and treating it as an API so that we can hit that API and get the data back. Now, if I click, you will see that we are getting a URL. If I put my debugger over here, you will see that it is generating some URL. But you can see that we are not able to get any features. This is because the data, the coordinate system, the coordinates that we are passing are actually converting it into 3857. If I change this to 4326 and if I refresh, you'll see that now we are able to get the result. So this is exactly how it is important for us to also understand and pay attention to the coordinate system that we are dealing with. And once you have this data, then you can obviously create your own pop-up, and this will also this is actually going to return a proper GeoJSON. So if you also want to export this GeoJSON somewhere and use it in some other application, it will still work, because this is creating a proper GeoJSON where the type is feature collection, timestamp is there, features are there with geometry name, properties, and things like that. So this is how it is useful for us to use middlewares like Geoserver, because they convert our normal data into something like a standard, which we can then use anywhere. So again, if you want to have a look at how to create pop-up, you will definitely find examples on OpenLayers site. And this is personally what I love about OpenLayers, because they have so many good examples available that you can always visit to their example directory, and chances are pretty high that whatever you want to do, you will be able to find that example. So here what we are doing is we are actually adding a marker div ID of marker and div ID of pop-up. Marker is basically for Vienna, and pop-up div is actually this div where we see the pop-up. And once we are clicking, then we are getting the data, and then we are setting that data in a proper HTML format. So we are setting the location you click towards this, and then we are showing that data. I would highly recommend you to test this out and try to create your own sort of like a basic OpenLayers map, because once you understand how to do this in plain old JavaScript, it will be very easy for you to replicate it in any JavaScript framework. I have also created a series on this, which focuses on OpenLayers. So if you go to my channel and if you look at the playlists, I guess you'll be able to find it somewhere. So yeah, we have an introduction to OpenLayers. So we have covered quite a few topics over here. How to understand how to create pop-up, understanding more information about OL layer, and things like that. So I would highly recommend you to check that out as well. And you can always subscribe to get more information and more update on my upcoming videos. So that will be all from my side in this workshop. If you have any questions, I'll open the floor for this. Thank you.